Now next up, we're going to talk about ketone bodies. Now in our discussion of fatty acid metabolism, we've talked about how fatty acids can be converted into acetyl-CoA, which enters the TCA cycle. However, fatty acids as well as amino acids can also be turned into ketone bodies within our liver, as you can see here, via the ketogenesis pathway. Now there are 3 ketone bodies that you need to remember. And can you happen to think of these? There you go. They're acetoacetate, beta-hydroxybutyrate, as well as acetone. And you can see all these here. So what's the exact point of making these ketone bodies? Well, when the amount of glucose available is not sufficient to meet the needs of the brain, or in other words, you're in a hypoglycemic state, free fatty acids will be used as energy. And the liver here can convert free fatty acids as well as ketogenic amino acids into ketone bodies, primarily acetoacetic acid as well as beta-hydroxybutyrate. Now these ketone bodies can be transported to the muscle as well as brain and be converted into molecules of acetyl-CoA, which can be used as an energy source. Now an important point to note here is that ketone bodies can only be used within the mitochondria of cells. Therefore, they can't be used by erythrocytes since they don't have a mitochondria. Now, in prolonged starvation, as well as diabetic ketoacidosis, oxaloacetate must be used for gluconeogenesis, and therefore it becomes depleted from the TCA cycle. Also, in alcoholics, excess NADH converts oxaloacetate into malate. And both of these processes cause a buildup of acetyl-CoA. This will then get converted into ketone bodies. And can you remember our 3 ketone bodies that we just talked about? There you go. We have acetoacetate, beta-hydroxybutyrate, and acetone, as you can see here. Now why is all this clinically important? Well, acetone can give your breath a fruity odor, and this is usually indicative of someone being in DKA, or diabetic ketoacidosis. There's also a urine test for ketone, which can detect acetoacetate, but it's not able to detect beta-hydroxybutyrate. Now one final point here is that the liver makes most of these ketone bodies, but it actually lacks the enzyme to be able to use them. Now the enzyme involved in ketone body production is HMG-CoA lyase, which is used to convert HMG-CoA to acetoacetate, as you can see here. And once again, these ketones travel in the blood to the brain as well as muscle, where they can be used. Alright, now let's take a shot at a quick flash quiz. An 18-year-old male with type 1 diabetes stops taking his insulin, and he eventually develops deep labored breathing, fruity smelling breath, as well as ketones in his urine. Now can you think of why? Well, this man has developed diabetic ketoacidosis because he has depleted oxaloacetate since his body has ramped up gluconeogenesis. Now since he's depleted his oxaloacetate, his TCA cycle is stalled, which shunts all the free fatty acids into ketone production to supply fuel for his brain as well as his heart. Now, as the name implies here, you developed a marked acidosis. And this is one of the causes of an increased anion gap, metabolic acidosis. Now, your body's response here is to eliminate as much CO2 as possible. And this results in deep labor breathing, or Kussmaul respirations. Now, also with this, you'll develop fruity smelling breath, and this is due to the exhaled acetone. Now, all these are typical signs seen in DKA, which can be life-threatening and requires large amounts of IV fluid as well as IV insulin and close monitoring of electrolytes to be managed correctly. Alright, well that's going to wrap up ketone bodies. See you in the next video.